This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports. You're listening to TGI Sports Talk with your host Keith Angle on Northeast Streaming Sports.
Good morning, everybody. Keith Angle for TGI Sports Talks. Are you serious? Right here on Northeast Streaming Sports. Great to have you with me today. Been a busy week. We're waiting for our co-host of Mad New Yorker, Carlos Chavez, to pop in the room. In the meantime, we'll do a little housekeeping. I want to thank all of you. Again, I apologize for not having a live show on the college football huddle Wednesday. It's just been a busy week in the real work world, and it just did not. The stars didn't align, as it were. So we didn't have a live show. We did repeat last week's show with Jim Behringer and Larry Sorensen, which again is still relevant, and I hope some of you got to watch it again, and some of you saw it for the first time. We'll be back live next Wednesday for sure. We'll be live Sunday on with our Sunday Stream of Consciousness, and we'll see what's going to go on. I don't know yet if Jim Behringer will be on. I think Jim Behringer will be on updated with everything going on in the NHL. And, we'll be live as we are now on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. This show now airs at 10 a.m. on a Roku. Get those Roku devices downloaded because you're missing out some good content. There is more and more exclusive content on Roku, including the Northeast Streaming Sports News Started Up show, which I co-host along with Mac McGrath and Jamie Paggs, the Philly sports guy, has been filling in a little bit, and I've done a little solo stuff as well this week. So it's been a long week, but we got some stuff going on in the world of sports. We'll talk about Charlie Montoyo getting fired by the Jays. Good, bad. Does it make a difference? I did a vlog a while back, and I'm going to bring Carlos here in a second. I did a vlog a while back about whether firing managers really works, and there's only 2 times in Major League history that teams have won a World Series after firing their manager. And the numbers kind of point out that most teams, it does not help. They might improve their record, but they don't make the playoffs on a very high percentage. We'll talk quickly about some all-star snubs. I don't know whether Carlos even knows about that topic, but I want to talk a little bit about that. And I guess if we put one in, we got to take one out. Just keep that in mind, guys. So if you have a comment, give me a guy who's got to come off the roster. And we'll talk about the NBA and Donavan Mitchell. Stories are heating up that he may be coming to New York. And there's some other destinations that would be plausible for Donovan Mitchell as well. So without further ado, let's get our co-host in here, Carlos Chavez, a Mad New Yorker. Good morning, Carlos. What are you promoting on your hat there? I can't read that.
No, it's just Hope Week for New York Yankees. I got it a few years back.
Oh, cool. Yeah. You're a little garbled on your audio.
Oh, how about now? Is it better?
No, it's got a little. There's just like the tone is off. It's.
1 second here.
You doing what you normally do?
Yep, everything's normal. How about now?
Still a little garbled. Why don't you pop out and pop back in? Sometimes that'll fix it.
All right, 1 second.
Okay. So we wait for Carlos. Our first topic today is going to be the Charlie Montoyo firing by the Toronto Blue Jays, who have struggled mightily this year. I believe at this point they are only let's see, where's the standings here? Only 4 games over 500. They are in a wild card right now as we speak. And, whether they can pop back in is going to be seen. How about now, Carlos?
Hello, good morning, guys. Can you hear me?
It's a little off, but I guess we'll have to deal with it. So I don't know what's up. Like I said, it's not garbled. It's just got a little weird. It's not feedback even. It's just weird. Whatever. We won't worry about it. I just won't let you talk very much. So we're going to start today. Are you in town, by the way, or are you traveling again?
No, I'm in town. I just want to say something real quick before we start going on the topics. So we had the Keith Hernandez Day the other day at Citi Field, the Mets. I was able to go there with my son. It was a birthday gift by my wife. Appreciate it, Janice. Thank you very much. And while I was taking a break, because my son was hot in the sun, I met a couple of fellas, and I want to give them a shout out because they're going to be listening to the podcast now. And before I give them a shout out, though, the story goes, they were talking sports. My son was waiting for me to get some snacks, and then I was listening to them, and then I butted in their conversation, and I told them, a few things that I thought, and they were listening to me, and they took in my perspective. So I met a few guys, and we had some fun talking sports, and just one of them is an actual trainer for the University of Albany women's basketball team, Mr. Steve Bedusa. And then the other two guys are referees for basketball, Kamal Myers and Mr. Joe Maurer. So if you guys are listening, it was nice meeting you guys, and just want to invite you guys to keep listening to the show and all the things that we have to say here, and keep enjoying my perspective as well.
Well, good stuff there, Carlos. We were remiss in wishing you a happy birthday on the show last week. I had missed that. I apologize. I caught it afterwards on Facebook, so we did send over our personal happy birthday wishes, but we missed it. I could have done it Friday. I could have done it Sunday when you were participating in the Stream of Consciousness show, and I apologize for that, but happy birthday.
I appreciate it. Thank you, and I appreciate everybody who sent out their birthday wishes. Thank you, and it's been a crazy one, but, you got to take one day at a time, right?
It only gets better, Carlos, let me tell you.
Like fine wine, sir, like fine wine. All right, so Keith Hernandez Day, right?
What's that?
The Keith Hernandez Day?
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Was crazy, and it was a little bit crazier than opening day with Tom Seaver Day. But I'm sure the attendance are almost about the same, and I'm glad people got to enjoy that ceremony for Keith Hernandez. And they were mentioning other baseball players for the Mets that who's going to get retired next, and names like Bob Gooden, Darryl Strawberry, and even number 5, Mr. David. Why can I remember his last name? David Wright.
David Wright's name been great.
Yeah. It's been a long morning. My son is sick today, so. Even David Wright's number, and my thing is with Keith and him getting into retiring his number. Congratulations to Mr. Keith Hernandez. It was something that I think the Mets did right. I'm not sure if they start, going down that hole of just retiring people's numbers. And I just wanted to see what your thoughts were on that, so.
Well, as I said on the Sunday Stream of Consciousness show, I thought it was well-deserved. Keith Hernandez was a great player, a leader. I talk about leadership a lot, as you know, and he was a great leader of both the Cardinals until they foolishly traded him away for Neil Allen, of all things. But they need to get him out of town for a lot of reasons, as we know. But he was one of the first pieces that got that New York Met, what should have been a dynasty and wasn't really, but it certainly helped turn that franchise around. Later on, obviously, there was, Strawberry and Carter and everybody else we know about. But Hernandez was a tremendous offensive player, great hitter, clutch hitter. And, I talked about it, and you caught me in a bit of hypocrisy on Sunday's show, so I'll give you some props that, there's a groundswell, as there are for a lot of players at different times, for Keith Hernandez to be in the Hall of Fame. And I think he's very, 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 very good. But the Hall of Fame is the Hall of Fame, and it's not the Hall of Very Good. And I thought he was just on the outside. And then during a football discussion, I mentioned Ken Anderson should be in, and you called me out on that. And you were actually right. They're kind of similar in different sports, obviously. But yeah, I can't say one belongs in and the other doesn't. So you actually caught me there. So that's a good catch by you. But Keith Hernandez, again, tremendous player, tremendous clutch player, and certainly a very important cog in that '86 Mets team for sure.
Right. So one of the things that we struggle as, and this is something that I mentioned to the guys that we were talking about, is that when you're a fan, you have favorites on your team. You have guys that you want on your team, even from other teams, right? But you have to kind of look at it where it's not about what's out there. It's about what these guys are producing, what these guys are doing at the moment. And people are always trying to compare the players, and historically that's always going to be done on social media, in books and things like that. But you can't. You gotta live in the moment. You got to appreciate what you have, what you're seeing out of these athletes, and what they're putting out there. When they asked me about Darryl Strawberry and Bob Gooden, as much as the '86 Mets and what they meant to me in my lifetime, I was like, you can't. Maybe Doc and Darryl in the Hall of Fame, they're going to be a little bit short because of their careers and how it was affected by the experiences of what they did outside of baseball. Had they not done those things, maybe that's something that would have affected their baseball play. We can't look at the stuff that they do on the outside, and if you look at it and you break it down, they're short. They're very good players who are short of making the Hall of Fame. But if you compare what they were able to do and make it, what?
Far short. You're still talking about Doc and Darryl.
Yeah.
They should have. They wasted their careers.
Yeah. It's tough to say they wasted their careers because when you get into those kind of situations, it's called a drug for a reason. So, but anyways,
I understand the demon side of it, right? And it's an illness, and I get that. But I'm talking from strictly a baseball standpoint. These were two guys that could have been surefire Hall of Famers, and it didn't happen.
Right. And so like to get back to those guys, and then comparing them to Keith Hernandez was consistent, and in that time frame on the other side of the city, you had him and Don Mattingly, two of the best players.
Yeah.
To be on the field and to see that in that time frame, if you weren't there, then you guys missed a lot of good baseball. So they both should be in the Hall of Fame, in my opinion, for what they did for their teams. And if those two guys are not on those teams would have been competitive. Yeah. And that's just the reality of the situation. And if you start going and trying to break down the stats, Don Mattingly was on a terrible terrible Yankee teams, for the most part. Keith Hernandez was on better teams, but those two guys, if you put them on another team, let's say the Athletics, or even at that time the Dodgers, they would have been championship teams.
I'll give you a better comparison for Hernandez getting into the Hall of Fame, and it's not against another first baseman. It's Bill Mazeroski for the Pirates. He was a great player, a great defensive player, but not nearly the offensive player even that Keith Hernandez was. But he was similar in the fact that he brought great, and saved tons of runs, right? He brought great leadership to that team and also great defense. I would say if Bill Mazeroski's in the Hall of Fame, as I rethink my argument, then Keith Hernandez has to be in the Hall of Fame.
Again, we don't have control of that, Keith. We're not the writers that have the last writing on the ballots. But again, as a baseball fan and watching what I watched, and I wasn't living in the States, mind you, in that time frame. I had to watch these things on TV that were taped over, and I would literally sit there and watch them for hours of baseball games. What we see now compared to what was back then is, baseball's evolved because the athletes evolve and the game evolves. But you miss, if you don't vote them in, then you don't understand the baseball that well. Because those are two guys that was like, that was the foundation of their teams, and that was steadfast, and that were there. And unfortunately, one wasn't able to overcome and help that team, and it wasn't his fault. But they called him down to baseball for a reason. And then Keith Hernandez, of course, with the miracle with the 86 Mets, was able to win at least one championship more. So.
Well, I certainly rethought my comments after you called me out that morning, and I compared them, like I said, more to, and again, some people, and I do it sometimes too, they get too wrapped up in the numbers, right? And, he doesn't have even close to 3,000 hits. He doesn't have this. He doesn't have that. So what? Look at it against some of the other guys that have made the Hall of Fame. And it doesn't have to be other first basemen. It's just, compare Hall of Famers to Hall of Famers. And he doesn't stack up with, Babe Ruth's numbers, but so what? Doesn't have to.
Yeah.
Guys that are in the Hall of Fame. Sure.
Right. And then so keeping in the baseball world, the firing by the Toronto Blue Jays and the manager Montoyo.
I'm glad it's not you, Robert. I thought I needed some hearing aids or something. Thank you. Good morning, Alan.
Good morning, Alan.
We've been talking about Keith Hernandez pretty much for the first 10 minutes, 15 minutes.
Yeah. Well, the firing of the Blue Jays manager, I don't think it was a good idea by the Toronto Blue Jays to do that in this moment because they're starting to win and they're starting to build something there. As far as for within this season,
yeah.
It's something that needs to happen and that should happen. But I think it's too soon. And then you throw in the names of the people that made it to the World Series after the teams that made it and the coaches that made it. The Blue Jays will probably not be able to do that. This is going to have a ripple effect for sure.
Well, I think I've been saying for weeks on pretty much all my shows that Charlie Montoyo was probably in trouble just because of expectations. It's expectations that get you fired more than anything.
Yeah.
The offseason moves, they made a jump last year. He did a great job with this team. I mean, he finished as 500 overall, but they lost 95 games his first season. He took them to 91 wins last year. This team was expected to not just make the playoffs, but be a serious World Series, a championship contender, and they have underperformed. And in these situations, you can't fire 25 guys. So the manager is usually the guy who takes the brunt. These things normally don't work. I'm okay with him getting fired because he in the clubhouse, while the guys seem to love him, the stories out of Toronto are that pretty much half that clubhouse felt he needed to go because they needed a tougher hand, a stiffer rein on some of their star players. Even the star players felt he wasn't going to be the guy that could be tough enough on these guys who were not playing up to expectations, and his personality wasn't going to be the right fit. Now, whether that works or not, it is debatable. It's only worked twice in history where a team fired a guy and I misspoke the other day. It was Billy Martin got fired and they brought in Bob Lemon.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff Torborg got fired and they brought in Jack McKeon in 23 in 2003. And the Marlins won the World Series over the same Yankees. And the history, most teams, they might improve their record a little bit. But I think if I remember right, like only 6% of the teams that fire managers end up making the playoffs during that same season. So
if you're talking about the GM and the manager of Toronto, what is it that baseball, you can have as high expectations as you want, but it is what it is, and you get what you get on the field, right? And if this is coming out of the team that they need a better manager, or they need somebody that's gonna keep them accountable. If you know that and you're a leader of that team, then you need to step it up, right? That's why I say, like, when it comes to these players, just do your job and let the managers do what they got to do. The manager has to be, and I don't know if you like when I say this, but the managers and the owners have to be the head. They have to be the leader. They have to set the standard so that the players can follow that. You put captains on the team, but it's just baseball, man. These guys have bad days and struggle, and sometimes they'll come in the clutch, and that's why they're the captain of the team. But and then you want to take example the Yankees, for instance, and Jeter, and people talk about his stats, but he was one of the guys that I saw playing the game, and would actually change the game by making a clutch hit or playing better defensively. And that's what you got to do. You got to do your job. Now, people argue, his stats, he shouldn't, he's barely a Hall of Famer. Like, okay, fine, but if you take Jeter off those teams, right, They're not the New York. They're not the New York Yankees. They're not the Yankees winning those World Series wins, man. That's where my argument comes in about being a player and a clutch player is like if that player is taken off the team and put somewhere else, can you do the same thing?
Well, I will say this too, and Ross, to give Ross Atkins a little bit of credit, when he fired Charlie Montoyo, he said, he's failed, and he's not going to fire himself. I mean, if the ownership fires him or the people above him fire him, that's one thing. He's not going to fire himself. But this team was flawed, and the bullpen isn't as good as they thought it would be. They don't have enough guys who can get swing and misses in the bullpen. That's hurt them. And Charlie Montoyo can't change that. If he doesn't have a guy who can come in and miss bats, then he can't change that. I mean, I feel bad. I think Montoyo, and he's been a good baseball man. He's been a solid baseball man for a long time. He paid his dues in the minor leagues for a long time. Did a good job here in Toronto. I think he'll get another chance. But you know what? This is a team that they felt they needed to make a move and have a new voice. And, it's their decision to make. I don't think this team was going to turn it around.
I said it, and I keep saying it's baseball, man. Like it's a marathon, not a sprint. So at the end of the day, if you're a player on that team, you got your coach fired because you didn't perform. So you need to change your perspective, and you need to do better. Like
there's two ways of thinking about this, right? I mentioned Bob Lemon replacing Billy Martin in 1978. The Yankees were 14 and a half games behind the Red Sox. They kicked back and won. One of the largest margins, if not the largest margin ever, to come back from. They were helped a lot by the New York papers being on strike, by the way, that whole summer, which certainly helped the team. But that was a more laid-back approach because Billy was really intense, and Bob Lemon wasn't, and that team was able to turn it around. Now, if you take it to a more recent situation where a guy didn't get fired, take the Nationals in 2000 when they win the World Series, 2019.
Mm-hmm.
They were nowhere. They were worse than the Blue Jays are at this point in the season. They were nowhere. There was rumors about Dave Martinez getting fired. They stayed the course. The team righted the ship, and we know what happened after that. They went on a tear season right through the playoffs and became the world champion. So, to your point, this is what the GMs get paid for. There's a fine line here. If I stay the course, it's baseball. It's a marathon. Will they right the ship? Will they catch fire? Will the chemistry click? And will the guys underperforming start to pick it up? Or do I need a guy who's going to give a little spark or a different voice in that clubhouse? So,
okay. So let's take it here locally, even with the Mets in my backyard. Last year, they had 66 different roster changes because of injuries. The pitching staff was erratic, and they fell short. And what they did, they fired the coach. This year they got a new coach, but this year, what is the difference, Keith? There's less people on the injury list, right, on the IL, that roster-wise, not just pitching, because of course you have Scherzer and DeGrom that was out. Now you have Tyrone McGill, but but you don't have 67 roster changes. It's a big difference, and now you have a different leader in the ball club, Buck. He knows baseball. He's giving people he's encouraging those guys. A couple of guys become leaders within the game, during the game. During different innings, but there's not one guy. I don't feel like there's one guy on that Mets team watching him and following him that steps up to me as a captain, like a Keith Hernandez, for instance. So that's what we're looking at now, and this is a team that just fired a coach and has a new one. So it's not necessarily always a coach, but it's a situation that you're in because it's baseball,
Well, you bring up a good point because, again, I talk about leadership a lot. You say it can come from the manager. I say that's fine, but you need a leader on the field, and you just alluded to it. I don't think Vlad Guerrero is a great player. Do I think he's a leader? I don't think he is. I don't think there's a guy on this team that this team really follows. Springer, I don't think is that guy. Chapman hasn't been there long enough.
Bichette has his days. The one guy I see that sparks him, that I think maybe in a year or two is going to be like a Molina, is Kirk.
Yeah, that's a good point. Kirk could be that guy. Yes, that's a good point. And he's, I believe, he's a starter in the All-Star game this year.
Yeah, and then in fact, I was one of the things that I wrote about the Mets looking to trade. They should have traded and got him. But one of the things that I see in Kirk is that's holding him back is the fact that his personality. He's not a Type A personality.
Well, and again, it's hard. You can lead by example there, but you're not going to get in guys' faces, right? If their work habits get bad, or they get lazy, or they're just not stepping up. And some of their stars have not. Bo Bichette's numbers look okay, but personally, I think he's regressed a little bit. Kevin Biggio's just dropped off the face of the earth.
He just got back from minor league, so
yeah. So there's nobody to get in these guys' face. And again, the pitching staff hasn't pitched all that well, except for a couple exceptions. That stuff really goes to the GM more than the manager. And by the way, to the conversation we were just having about there's two ways to go. This year, Baltimore and Seattle are perfect examples. Brandon Hyde in Baltimore was one of the top candidates to get canned here early in the season, and they've won, I don't know what they won, 11 in a row.
yeah.
11 in a row. Scott Servais was also on the hot seat here a few weeks ago as they were underperforming, and they're just on fire now. So,
and I mentioned to you, I saw Seattle play the New York Mets, and I told you, and you said that day that they don't look like they're going to get far, and I said that looks like a good team, and Rodriguez is a pretty good player, and I said that if anything, the Mariners will be a sneaky team. I mentioned that before, but you were just looking at them, and every week we talk about it, even on the Sunday, like, oh, those Seattle Mariners, like, what are they doing out in the West? And now they picked it up. And we both always talk down about the Baltimore Orioles, but I do mention that their kids, and they've been doing a phenomenal job. In last week, putting up those numbers against the Angels of all teams, 2 days in a row, that's, these kind of games, man, they get me excited because, baseball being played like at the top level. And then they're not even the number one games on TV, So it's like, it's crazy, but you have to be out there. You got to watch some of these games. I know they're long to watch, but some of these teams, man, they're going to pick up the slack, and it's going to be a good little playoff run for those teams.
Yeah, there's some divisions that are runaways and probably aren't going to be competitive, but the race for the 3 wild cards in both leagues there's almost 9 teams within, or 10 teams within 5
Yeah.
A wild card spot in the American League.
At least 2 handfuls, at least. Yeah. So.
Yeah, and look at the Orioles, only a game and a half back, and Seattle's now in the playoffs if they were to start today, which they don't, of course. But
right.
It's going to be a lot of fun to watch. Again, I'm not a big fan of adding that extra wild card, but it keeps more fan bases involved. So, it is what it is. They don't listen to me, so big deal.
And the guy that I met, and then we mentioned about the Mets adding a bat. You can't just they did that in the past year with Cespedes and trying to add a bat. You can't just add one player and make a change. I think Atlanta did the best job last year when they added 5 players, and they got great play out of 3 out of 4, 3 out of 5 of them, and then the other 2 guys supplemented the great play by being on the team, right? So if the Mets are going to make a move, and they're in a conundrum right now, they're going to make a move. What they need to do is they need to get at least 5 players because they're not doing well in on the third base between Escobar and Davis, and then also even though the bat's waking up a little bit for Escobar, Davis is struggling with his bat, and you got the catcher situation, right? I mean, these guys filling in Ludo and the other guy right now, they're doing okay, but you need at least 4 or 5 players if you're going to make it a contention for a World Series. Or you do what you have, and you play up to your potential, and you play up the rest of the season. That's the way I look at it. If you get that one bat, you're going to look at it as it's going to turn out to be something like a Cespedes situation where you got the guy that can hit, but when you really need him to hit, and he strikes out, or you don't win that game, you're just looking around like, well, you're the guy. That's why we got you.
Yeah, and Alan, I'll get to your next question a little bit when we segue into the All-Stars selections a little bit. What was I going to say there? I think the Mets are not going to trade any of their big assets, young assets. If they're So they're going to have trouble getting a Josh Bell, but they could get a Nelson Cruz easily, and Nelson Cruz could be a bat that could help that lineup. And I think they're going to have to go not bargain basement, but they're not going to go all in for, a big name.
And to be honest with you, Keith, the Yankees and the Mets, they keep holding on to their assets like they're going to need them tomorrow. Look, today, you got to play for today, man. Bring these guys up, man. You don't know what you're going to get. Whether you're gonna wait for 4 years or you bring him up now, I don't understand. If you say this is a guy, he's a prospect, and he's the future, you don't know if he's the future if you don't play him. It's the same thing in the NBA and basketball. This gets very tiring, and as a fan, I was like, I want to see these guys play. They were great in college. Let's see if they're gonna be good or even decent in the majors. Like, put these guys in the field, put them on the court, people.
But Carlos, they've got player development people watching these guys.
What player development, Keith? These guys aren't developing on the bench.
No, they're not. They can't develop on the bench. They develop by playing, and if we're ready for the major leagues, I'm confident they'd be there.
That's not true because you don't give a guy an opportunity. You don't know. You just don't know. Just like with Aaron Rodgers. Look, Aaron Rodgers sat behind Brett Favre for 5 years.
Well, that's a different situation.
Even with Mahomes, everybody was like, look what he's doing in practice. They got rid of Alex just because Mahomes is doing good.
Football and baseball, you can't.
I know, but look, again, you can't compare any of these sports together. But what, to me, is this, right? And if you look at it business-wise and money-wise, you're talking that you have assets, but you're not using the value of what you have as an asset. You just send it. You just sit there, and it doesn't. And this isn't money because they're not gonna get you any kind of money unless you see that the talent is being used. You know what I'm saying?
And if the Mets have somebody that can play better at third base than what they've had, that has not been a good position for the Mets. The Yankees don't need to bring up one of their kids. Their infield has played fine, and they don't need to make that kind of move. What they need is a left fielder and a center fielder, and they don't have that in the minor league.
Well, we just got Wade. We got Wade back from the Angels, but I mean,
but he's not gonna.
That's what I'm saying. You got Peraza and Volpe. Like, move people around. You can put DJ LeMahieu at third. Like, let's see these guys and let them see. I want to see them be pressured and see if they can handle it. And then you realize if these guys are ready or not. But if you have them swinging a bat and single A, double A, you don't see nothing, man. You can't tell what these guys can do, man.
You don't need a guy to come up and sit on the bench. And, he's not.
You bring him up and bring him down for a reason. It's just a money thing for these teams. That's all it is, and that's annoying. That's and it can cause you a season as well. So.
It's not a money thing in the Volpe and Peraza situation. Those kids they have determined they aren't ready to play yet. It's got nothing to do with money with that situation.
Nah, I don't think that's true at all. Look, if I'm Yankee GM, man, I'm bringing those guys up, and I get rid of Torres right away because he's got value now. You see that what he's been doing, and he's not going to be on the team for long. So just get rid of him and get you some pitching. That's it. It's simple.
Alan just sits in the weeds waiting to make one of these comments about a guy they got from the Yankees in that Gallo trade. Anyway,
oh gosh, and then
let's move on a little bit. We'll go get away from the managers. Let's talk real quick. The All-Star rosters are out. Alan has about Corey Seager being named. I wouldn't doubt there'll be 2 or 3 more guys, if not more, that'll probably drop out over the weekend, especially like Garrett Cole's pitching Sunday. He's not going to pitch Tuesday. They may very well replace him. But as far as snubs, just in general, people who you think should have been named and weren't, who sticks out in your mind? Whether it's the Mets, Yankees, it could be anybody in baseball. I think there's a few guys. In fact, I think Francisco Lindor, his batting average is down, but his production has been really, really good. I think he turned into a leader on this team, talking about leaders. And I think he is a little bit of a snub. And Alan, to your question, if Corey Seager's going, I would have considered naming Lindor the replacement here instead of Seager. Can't do that. Sorry, I'm in the wrong league. I forgot Seager's not with the Dodgers. My bad. But again, I think he would be one of the guys that I would talk about. Freddie Freeman, I would talk about. Austin Riley with the Braves. Again, maybe they need to expand these rosters so that guys can get in.
I mean, the thing with baseball is some of these guys are doing what they did last year. I mean, if you can tell by the way that the voting went in, and then you also see that they were supplemented by the Mets team was supplemented by getting on the second time or on the second round for the backup. So I don't know. I mean, someone even like a former Met like Gomez, who's playing well. I mean, so there's a lot of guys that are playing, that are starting to play well, pick it up.
Here's another guy that was a bust with the Yankees, and he played great. Again, he's playing great with the Reds, and Brandon Drury. They can only take one player for the Reds, obviously. It was Luis Castillo. He's pitching great, but there's pitchers that got snubbed, like Aaron Nola, like Zach Wheeler. They could have taken those pitchers and taken Brandon Drury would have been a great story because this guy played very well out in Arizona, came to New York, had some physical issues, and it just never worked out. And he's been nowhere for about 4 years. And he's having a great season with the Reds. He would have been a great story in the All-Star game.
Yeah, I mean, like you mentioned Zach Wheeler, but he came back from that injury, and then the thing is that he's not. There's no consistency with Zach Wheeler, which is why I'm kind of glad that the Mets were able to trade him off to get rid of him. But I mean, it's not bad. He's just not consistent. And then that bullpen is just atrocious. I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe he looks good because he's not surrounded by that many good pitchers.
There's a couple guys in here that are going to be trade candidates that are kind of busts as well. Or I'm sorry, not busts, but snubs. Josh Bell, I think, deserved consideration. At least I'm sure he got consideration, but he deserved consideration. He's likely gone at the All-Star or the trading deadline. Who else? Saw another guy that stood out to me as a trade candidate. Now I can't find. Well, Brian Reynolds, possibly for the Pirates.
Yeah, Reynolds.
Not having a great year, but again, the Pirates were only getting one pick, and he could have been considered there. Brandon Drury very well might be a trade candidate for a contender. So there's some guys who are, probably not going to be with the same teams that are going to participate in this game. They'll be they may be going to new teams as soon as the All-Star breaks over. Who knows? So.
Well, they go from an All-Star jersey to another jersey. So.
Do we even like the All-Star game anymore? I mean, to me, it used to be a big deal because before the proliferation of cable TV and games on every night. And the only time I could see all the stars play, especially in the National League, because I lived in upstate New York and got the Yankees. If I want to see Hank Aaron and Willie Mays, I had to watch the All-Star game.
Right. I mean,
today it's not.
It has its moments, right? It just depends on it just depends on where it's played sometimes. Like right now the fact that it's being played in LA, that helps a little bit because of the media, but the players on the team, some of them saying they're being snubbed, some of them, what's going on there. That makes it kind of interesting because then you're like, okay, so who's on the field, right? I thought it was played on like 4th of July weekend before.
Well, maybe years ago, but it's been played in the middle of July for quite a while now.
Yeah, like the time is good for a break for baseball for the players themselves. If you don't want to watch more baseball, you don't have to watch the All-Star game. Like it just depends on I think it's more personal. Like if you're gonna watch these guys, watch them. If not,
And what about all the stuff around the All-Star game, like the home run derby? Is it relevant? Do we care about it? I mean, Corey Seager, as Alan mentioned to me earlier, he was named the last participant. We want to see, do you care as a Met fan whether Pete Alonso wins his third home run derby in a row or not?
What I dislike about Pete Alonso winning the home run derby as a New York fan is that he struggles after he comes back for a couple of weeks to get another hit. After the home run derby. So, but that being said, one thing I like about what makes it interesting this year is that I don't know if you know this, but he's going to be going against Acuna for the first round. So I think that's going to be kind of fun if you like rivalries. But I like to watch it because I'm like, you want to see if these guys can, how far you can hit the ball with the regular pitch ball that goes less than 90 miles an hour. So.
Yeah, Alonso is fun to watch. I mean, I have not been a big, and I think that, by the way, one of the problems with a home run derby is it shouldn't be like 3 hours long. Jesus, you could do this thing in an hour. But
So many commercials, Keith. You know how it is nowadays.
it's way too long. But
That's the TV. You need the TV spots. It's like the NFL right now. They drag us so many games because of TV time.
I will tell you, I'm certainly not a Met fan, but each of the last 2 years, I have tried to make sure as I flipped around the channels, I got back when Pete Alonso was up because he was a lot of fun to watch the last couple of years. Man.
He's not. You know what about him is like he doesn't. He's like one of those guys. He's not a McGriff and he's not like a Gonzalez, but his body type, you're like, this guy can hit. And you want to see how hard he's hitting and how high. I remember one year I watched Pujols, and he was just, I think it was when they were in St. Louis, he was just smacking that ball, hitting all buildings.
He was hitting balls that weren't getting like 10 feet off the ground. I remember that year. And by the way, that's a good story too. First, I'll stay on the All-Star game for a second now because finally our commissioner, Rob Manfred, does something right and names Pujols and Miguel Cabrera to the team, which I think is wonderful. And I think that Pujols going to participate in the home run derby is kind of cool in his last year as well. So,
well, they should have done a Pujols versus Cabrera, right? The older All-Star guys, the more experienced guys, Pujols versus Cabrera, because I would actually be interested in that.
I don't think Cabrera's in it though.
No, he's not. He's not. What I'm saying that he's something that he should have done because Cabrera can hit.
Yeah.
You know, and if he's hitting the ball, he's going less than 80 miles an hour, man. He can smack the skin.
It'll be interesting to see if Pujols can hold his own against these young studs at the end.
Oh, I mean, if all he has to do is hit, it's not a problem. It's when you make him run and catch and all that other stuff.
Yeah. Alan brings up Martin Perez, who got named to, who's been a journeyman. I think he's 31, at least 31 years old.
I think he might be a little older, but yeah.
He might be 32. He's coming into his own with Texas this year. And getting traded at the deadline, and now he says Texas is talking about extending him. Well, if they can't come to terms, he's probably going to be with somebody else by August 3rd, Alan. But
and that's bad for because he's a journeyman, you know. But he's been playing well.
Yeah, no, he's pitched great, and we were talking about this, and we'll get off this in a second, but I'll give Alan some kudos. You know, Texas is struggling. Texas is up and down. They're probably not going to make the playoffs, but I derided John Gray. John Gray's pitching really, really well in his the last couple of months. He's been tremendous since coming back from a little bit of an injury. Perez has pitched well. This team's got some building blocks. They're just not ready yet.
Yeah. What's crazy though is if you go like down the street up the street to Kansas City Royals, they're uprooting the whole team and just changing players in and out. Like,
well, kudos to them too. They beat the Blue Jays last night with 11 players missing from because they were for COVID. So kudos to them as well. Let's switch gears a little bit. Donovan Mitchell, who after the Jazz had traded Rudy Gobert to the Timberwolves, they said they were not trading Donovan Mitchell, and they were pretty fast set on that. And now it seems they've changed. The Knicks are right in the middle of this, and if you believe the New York papers, talks are heating up. The question becomes, what do you give up? Is it worth giving up what the Knicks or anybody's going to have to give up to get, because he's going to get more than they got for Gobert? I saw it was about 5 number ones from the Knicks and 4 players. The players I don't know what the Jazz are going to take, but 5 number ones.
Gobert was one of them.
Yeah, three of their picks, which are obviously not conditional, and 2 of the conditional picks they got during the draft. And who are the other guys that they were going to trade here? Hold on. I have it open here. I think they're going to have to give up Barrett to get him. I'm not sure I want to do it, but
no, it's not worth it. There's no upside to bringing Mitchell to a team that right now isn't even ready to be, a playoff team.
That won't make them put them over the top, right? They're not going to win 55 games next year if they bring in Donovan Mitchell. With Mitchell there, team with Brunson, by the way, that's a pretty defensive deficient backcourt right there too. That's going to be a problem.
That's where I'm going right now. That's where my head is at. It's like don't do it to yourself.
And also, but the one thing it does is it brings in, the Knicks don't have that one guy to attract other free agents, right? When the Nets, when they got Harden, they already had Durant and they had Irving. And, the Lakers had LeBron when they brought in Davis, and You just need somebody to attract guys here. The Knicks have never had that guy. They went after LeBron. They went after Chris Paul. They went after so-and-so. They had Carmelo on the back end of his career, but no, they didn't want to come and play with Carmelo. Their guys might want to come and play with.
Oh, Keith, I like to talk about business and sports and how it affects everything, but the New York Knicks need to do one thing, and that's get back to basketball and fundamentals and foundation and building from there. They got a great squad right now, and the youth that they have on the team. Have they won anything? No. Will they win anything? Let's see, because this is why you had the draft picks. This is why you had these young kids. Do they have the coaches to do that? I don't think they do. Do they have a GM to support the coach to do this and the team that they have? I don't think they do. And I think that's where the problem falls, is because you're jersey chasing like you've been doing for the last 35 years, trying to get people to sell tickets, to get people in the garden. And people, you know what? To a certain extent, they'll do those things, but they'll stop supporting you when there's no wins. You're not winning. And the big thing about New York now is like everybody comes to the garden to see other stars from other teams. That's not what you want in New York. That's not what you're trying to do. And if you bring a Donavan Mitchell, he'll bring as many people that follow him that are New Yorkers that follow him through school and support him. Him being from Long Island and in this area in the region. Well, yeah, that's great. But at the end of the day, look, we don't just play basketball and start and try to win games, man. Like, take the business side out of it for just 2 minutes and look to see what's that. If you don't look to see what happened in the past, you can't move on and change what you're going to do for the future, right? It hasn't worked. It will not work. And people like me who are New York fans, I'm not paying to go see that mess. Look, I'm already upset that we got Brunson. I think Brunson is like maybe 2 or 3 seasons away from being an all-star. So now we have to take that brunt. Now the Knicks have to take that brunt.
Be an all-star to be a contributing player to a good.
No, but what I'm saying is that now we get back to the business part of it. What you're paying him for is not what you're going to see for the next 2 years. That to me, as a fan, as a ticket buyer, as one of those people buying popcorn and hot dogs and hamburgers or whatever, and spending money buying drinks. I don't want to see that at the Garden, man. I really don't, to be honest with you.
I will disagree with you in the sense that if he's the player that he was from, the end of November, December on, he's worth the money that he got paid. If he is that player, he is good enough to get that money.
What I'm saying to you is, I'm not saying that he's not worth what he's getting paid, because that's not for me to say. Okay, I'm not worried about his contract specifically. I'm worried about the fact that he's a player that we're paying him that amount of money, but we're not going to see from him the value for another 2 or 3 years. And I say that in a sense because of the team that he's on right now, the pieces he has, right? But again, it doesn't mean that you have to go out there and pay the same amount or even more to get a player that's similar to him, all right, or greater than him. And then you're gonna build something, because that's not how that works either. Just because you bring players in that are all-stars doesn't mean that they're gonna make you a championship team. That's not how that works. And I'm gonna say this: I didn't like the Melo move from the Knicks when that happened. When you see Mitchell played on the team with Rudy Gobert, man. So Rudy Gobert had somebody to pass the ball to help him help that team. The Knicks don't have that. And Brunson he's not a Rudy Gobert. He's going to shoot shots, and he's going to I think he's good defensively. I think he's a good basketball player, but he's yet to become a great player. Right, and it's the same thing. If you see on the roster, the guy next to him is Barrett. He's a good player too. He's not great just yet. So now you have 2 guys that you have to go up the same escalator at the same time. And then you're going to bring a Donavan Mitchell in, who needs somebody better than those 2 guys to be consistent and hit his 25 points average. Come on.
Mitchell's one of the top 10 guards in the league.
Definitely. Because he has Rudy Gobert. Because Rudy Gobert was his teammate. That's why. It wasn't him on his own. If you take Gobert out of the Jazz now that they did, and you need Mitchell there, you think he don't even want to stay there because he knows his production is going to go down because he doesn't have that same player. Think about that.
Well, what I think about is this: if I make the trade and I don't have to give up Barrett, and I don't know that it can do it because if I'm Utah, Barrett's got to come back in that trade. But if I can keep Barrett, I've got Barrett, 22 years old. I got Donovan, 25 years old. I got Brunson, who's 24 years old.
23.
That's a 23. That's a pretty good base to start to build and bring other people in here, and be competitive in the next couple of years. You're not going to win the East most likely, but as you get in better position to bring in free agents with those three guys in place, I think you got a good base to start.
I think it's just one of those revolving doors. People going in, people coming out, but it's the same idea and concept that the Knicks been doing, and it doesn't work. It does not work.
I want to address Alan's comment here. He wouldn't give up that much for Durant, so why do it for Donovan Mitchell?
Exactly. I mean, and Mitchell's younger.
Hold on. There's two big things here. Mitchell's much younger. The Nets are over a barrel. They got to move Durant because he wants out. So teams have got them over a barrel. And then Utah doesn't have to trade Donovan Mitchell. Danny Ainge, when he was with the Celtics, was famous for saying guys weren't available and then making them available. But, I want 2 of your best players and 172 first-round draft picks. That's where he'd start. He'd ask for just astronomical stuff. So who knows if he's even going to get tired.
And I mentioned this in a couple of shows and when I comment people.
Johnny, welcome to the show, but please don't give me Kyrie. God, Jesus.
Look, the KD, every team wants KD. They're not going to lie. They're not going to say no to KD. But they will say no to the fact that he's getting older, so he only has maybe 3 or 4 years, right? Because of his, because of injuries and things that happen in the season. He's getting older, and that contract is just ridiculous. So, unfortunately for KD, and I'm going to say that for real, because his agent and his team put him in that predicament. The same thing with Kyrie. They overpriced him for other teams to be interested and help them out when they want to move or they need to move or things just need to change. So, and I don't blame anybody, but those guys and their teams.
And I do shout out. Good morning, Rick Sherlock. Good to have you with us. We know Carlos' audio's off this morning. We found out from Robert Butler at the top of the show that Carlos got a new Sports Illustrated phone, and that's what he's using today. So
that's not in that budget any big as it used to be, Rick.
We're going to have to get the Northeast Streaming Sports to give him more money. What do we got here? If he really wants to prove himself, he can go to a team that's struggling and take them to a title. Are we talking about Durant? Durant could take the Nets to a title.
Is he talking about Donovan Mitchell or Durant?
That's what he's talking about. You got to clarify yourself there, Alan. Mitchell, maybe, yes, but
let's be clear about one thing. In this basketball era, there's not one player, not even LeBron James, that can go to a team and bring a championship to them.
Yeah, he's talking about Durant. So he's not going to get traded to the New Orleans Pelicans and lead them to a championship.
I think that's what a lot of basketball fans want to see is just that one guy carrying a team because they hear about Jordan doing things like that, and they saw Giannis do that in the last few games that they like that. Those are things that be glad that you see that don't happen normally. Michael Jordan was surrounded by good players and some great players. He didn't just do it all himself. And on top of that, the difference between Michael Jordan and all these players nowadays is Michael Jordan actually played defense and was on all defensive teams back-to-back years and things like that. So, if you don't play defense, you're going to have less opportunities to score. So,
yeah. Okay, so you take the Knicks out of the equation. First of all, I ask you question number one. Is Donovan Mitchell, in fact, going to get traded based on what Danny Ainge is going to want the world for him? 5 first-round draft picks. At least 4 first-round draft picks. and a really good player. Is he going to get traded?
No, I don't think it's going to happen unless the Knicks they just get crazy and try to make this move. If Donovan Mitchell comes to the Knicks, it's because the Knicks will make that move.
Okay, and if he does get traded,
I don't think he'll get traded. I think it's the same thing that's happening to Donovan Mitchell is what just happened now with Ayton. Ayton went out and got another deal.
I understand. I'm asking you now to take yourself outside of your own mindset. You're already in. He does get traded. I say if he does get traded, it's to the Knicks, or he doesn't get traded. If he gets traded, where would he go? Where did you see him go?
Donovan Mitchell?
Correct. Forget about Durant. I'm tired of talking about Durant.
Donovan Mitchell, man, he should go to like the Hawks or Sacramento. You got to go to a team that has assets to get him. That's the thing.
They just brought in the kid. They already got Trey Young, and they just brought the kid in from San Antonio. They're not.
Yeah. I know, but that's what I'm saying. They need 2 or 3 more players over there that can ball, right?
Yeah. Well.
But I don't think they have enough space and money for that. So
I have a feeling because of Leon Rose's previous relationship with Donovan Mitchell, and as he's done with some other players, he will end up a New York Knicks. They will probably overpay for him, and then it's going to be on Leon Rose to make sure he can put some players around him.
no, it's not going to happen. And the way that things are going right now in the NBA, it's going to be it's not even going to happen. It's not going to be good for the Knicks, the future, because of how the money is being spread out. And I mean, I think, like I've been telling people, in the next year or two, there's going to be a lockout. You can't have astronomical wages for for the play that you're getting. Ticket holders are going to be like, I'm not paying for this.
Alan, I can't compare the Bulls to any of the teams that we're talking about here. I mean, they could afford to bring in a guy just to do one thing. They had the best player in the history of basketball playing on that team, and some of the other top 50 players in the history on that team. So the Bulls, you got to take out of the equation. What else? Before we wrap it up here, Carlos, we got a couple minutes. Anything else that is bothering you in the world of sports this time?
Well, I mean,
you only got 2 minutes. Just
yeah. So with that deal that the Suns did is they challenged Ayton to get a contract. The Pacers offered him a contract.
Yep.
That the Suns had an opportunity to rid themselves of a player that didn't think they want to be there, right? Because I don't think it was just money. I think it was a situation where he's like, he doesn't want to be in Phoenix anymore, right? But now he has to be in Phoenix, he has to play, and they're giving him money.
Well,
think about that.
Phoenix has laid out a lot of money for their free agents this summer, and they better. They probably need to win a title pretty quickly. That window.
They should have won 2 titles.
That window's. I'll give you my outrage this week is Dustin Johnson. You may or may not care about this because we don't talk about golf a lot on this show, but I talk about it sometimes in my vlogs. Dustin Johnson is taking the lead at the British Open, and I can't be rooting against Dustin Johnson and Bryson DeChambeau and all these other losers who have gone to the Live Golf experience for just a money grab and helping these countries sports watch their reputations. It's ridiculous. And if these guys win this, any one of these guys win this tournament, I hope they take it freaking away from them. That's what I hope.
They're not going to take it anything away from them. Plus, that money they got is going to help them keep it.
200. I don't often. I'm not a huge Tiger Woods fan, but I will tell you this: he turned down $500 million just to show up for 12 tournaments in that Live tournament, and he said, "Forget it. I'm not going there. That's not where I need to be. I need to be where I can play in majors and win major championships, and that's what matters. It's not the money. These guys all are multi-millionaires, all of them. They don't need the money. Phil Mickelson needs $250 million from the Saudis? I don't think so.
Well, he's got a gambling problem, right? Wasn't he outed?
Yes, but he's got tons of money. You know what? I have been the biggest Phil Mickelson fan in my lifetime, bigger than anybody. I love Phil. Love to watch him play. He's dead to me for this because you can't go there and lend your name to these terrorist sponsoring, whatever you want to call them, countries, and let them sport.
The tournament was started by Greg Norman, right?
Well, it wasn't started by him. He's the face of it. They hired him to be the face of the organization. Yes, they tried to get Jack Nicholson for $100 million. He said no. Jack Nicklaus. Yeah, they wanted to get Jack Nicholson as the Joker. No, Jack Nicklaus turned down $100 million. Greg Norman went there. I have no respect for any of these guys. None.
I mean, it's golf. That's look, not for nothing, but those countries need and want to be represented too when it comes to golf. They don't have any players right now, so now that the golf is being played there, maybe some guys will come out of there. And they got a lot of guys coming up out of that out of Qatar because they had that huge sports academy there. So we'll see what happens, man.
All right, we got to get out of here, guys. Alan, we'll talk about Watson on Sunday. I promise you. If that happens, the NFL's got no cojones at all. So we'll talk more about that.
You got me put when it comes to the law, man.
There for all you guys for participating, even Johnny mentioning Kyrie. Thank you. We'll see you next week with Are You Serious on TGI Sports Talk right here on Northeast Streaming Sports. Have a great day, guys. Have a great weekend.
Have a good one, guys.